said, why this place so dry? No love to find. You're the only one that ever acts kind. They all after me. What's happening? I wish that you could see what I see. Your boyfriend's a douche that thinks he's cool and doesn't deserve a girl like you.
Hey guys, it's me, Nagato Uzumaki with Ifer. This is my second time recording this, but so today, as you can see, I'm going to be doing what if Deku was the reincarnation of Neji. But first of all, please follow my Twitter and Instagram. Please, if you have a Twitter or Instagram, just follow them. Also, tell your friends about my YouTube channel, because I won't be able to keep doing this unless I could. Well, I mean, I could. I just really want more because I'm greedy. But so, the ship is Ochako, and in this timeline, her quirk is kind of like Snipes, except instead of like zero gravity, she could control the gravity of any weapon. So basically, like an OP 1010 from Naruto. So, as we cut to the hospital, we see two children, and not much is known about them, but what is known about the world is that powers are the majority, and that if you don't, you're deemed a failure by society. As we look at a older man and older woman, not too old, but old, we see the woman in a hospital bed holding two young children. One is a girl with bright green hair, green eyes, and a big goofy smile with freckles. The other one is a boy with what seems to have no pupils and long brown straight hair, who is just staring blankly at the ceiling. They loved their daughter, and they were smiling and happy. But once they took a look at their son, they were repulsed, and regret washed over them for what they had created. 4 years later, we cut to a doctor. The parents say, "So what are our children's quirk?" The doctor says, "Your daughter has a very strong form of pyrokinesis. She could control fire, create it, destroy it. Basically, she could beat Endeavor." And they're impressed because at the time, Endeavor was the number 2 hero. And so they look at the doctor again and say, "Well, what's our little boy's quirk?" Hoping that he'd at least have a good quirk. The doctor said, "Well, it's hard to see what his quirk is. We don't know. Even though he appears to be blind, it's almost as if he could see and hear through walls, see for hundreds of miles, and we think there's more, but we don't know yet. We're gonna have to call in a few tests, maybe in the next couple of years." And they were disappointed. Sure, it'd be good for spying, but not much else, and they wanted to get famous and rich. So they just said, "Okay," and they left. As they were going on the car ride back home, the parents were yelling slurs at him, calling him useless and worthless, and saying that should have never created him and that they should have just thrown him away. Izumi questioning why they were saying this to her brother. She said, "Mommy, Daddy, why are you saying that to brother? Or big brother," because he's older than her by like an hour. And they said, "Well, he's making it so that we're not going to be famous on purpose, and he wants us to not do well. Basically tricking her into thinking that Izuku just doesn't want them to do well. And so she looks at her brother and says, "You're such a stupid meanie." And so we cut to 10 years later. And we see a boy, the same boy, but his hair is to the bottom of his back, and it's kind of tied at the end. And we see people throwing stuff at him, but every single time he dodges. And then one kid with red eyes and an evil smile with ash blonde hair comes up and says, "Hey, Deku, bet you can't dodge this one," and throws an explosion at him. And then Izuku gets the sudden voice in his head and the voice says, "Put your energy into your fingers, just turn in a circle and say, 8 trigram, 64 palm rotation." And Izuku does exactly what the voice says, believing it to be his subconscious. Izuku says, 8 trigram, 64 palm rotation. And then when the smoke disperses, everyone sees Izuku with no injury, not even a burn mark. Katsuki looks at him and says, "Deku, what is that? What's your quirk? Have you been hiding it from me all this time? Do you think I'm weak or something?" And then Katsuki charged at the boy with a right hook. Izuku ducked under it, and then the same voice said, put your chakra into the same fingers and say, what was it again? 8 trigram, 64 palm." And then so Izuku's like, 8 trigram, 64 palm. And then the voice is telling him to, like, through the motions in his head. And so then basically the chakra points in the body, like, there's still chakra, it's just people can't really unlock them. Like, some people can, other people can't. Ooh. Should I have him kind of like a team guy situation going on where there's a person who's like Rock Lee in his class? And then Ochako would be like the 10-10 person. There just wouldn't be like a mic guy. But should I have that? Excuse me. And then so basically the chakra points in the body, they could still conduct chakra. It's just people have gotten so used to quirks, it would take them years to unlock chakra again along with quirks and like combine them. So the chakra points are just like the nervous system. So basically once Izuku's done, and he's basically gone like half a hallway while he's hitting Katsuki. And so once he's done, everybody looks at the other end of the hallway and see Katsuki lying on the ground, and they're like, "Come on, dude, get back up. Beat that Deku." And then Katsuki's like, "Don't worry, guys, I'm gonna beat him." And once he tries to get back up, nothing happens. He's like, "You useless Deku, what did you do?" And Deku's just like, "I beat you, Katsuki. What are you gonna do about it? You aren't gonna do anything. You're not able to do anything. You can't even get up. So, I suggest you leave me alone." In a cold voice. Katsuki was slightly scared but didn't show it. He's like, "Yeah, whatever, Deku." As this was at the end of the day, so they go home. Izuku walking straight to his room to figure out what the voice was. And Izumi spilling the tea to her parents. And this is what happened with Izumi. So, basically, Izumi saw what happened. Like, she was expecting Katsuki to beat him at first. Also, in any what if I have that has Izumi and Katsuki, Izumi's probably going to be with Katsuki. Unless it's like a harem Deku what if, where she's not related to Deku. Then she's going to be with Deku. But so she comes in like 20 minutes after Deku because she was just processing what was happening on the way home. Like, he was running home. She was slowly walking home. She basically got home like, it was the winter time, right? It was like 5 p.m. It was dark. Her parents were worried. Like, so when she came through the door, they were like, honey, where were you? We were worried. And she said, I need to tell you guys something. And they were like, tell us anything, sweetie. It's okay. And then so she tells them about the start where everybody was throwing trash at Izuku, he was just dodging. And they're like, okay, yeah, what is it? And so she tells them about the part where Katsuki came up and tried to throw an explosion at him, and then he tried, and then Izuku just yelled something like 8 trigram 64 palm rotation, and nothing happened to him. And then she tells him about the part where Katsuki tried to throw a right hook, but Deku went under it, and then he yelled something else while holding up his middle finger and pointer finger of both of his hands and said 8 trigram 64 palm, and started hitting Bakugo in what looked like his vital points. So they just looked at her and said, really? And she was like, yeah. But the craziest part is, while he was doing this, the veins around his eyes were bulging, and he seemed more focused. And her father had a look of shock and said, I think I've heard of this before. Come on, guys, we're going to the museum. And so everyone except Izuku, who was sitting in his room trying to either figure out what the voice in his head is by meditating or going to sleep and just sleeping it off, was up doing that in his room. They went to the museum. His father went to the history section. And yes, I'm making this where the past of this world was Naruto. But I know that, like, My Hero Academia takes place in, like, 20-something, like 2040 or something. And Naruto probably existed in, like, the early parts of Japan or something. So he goes to, like, an old history section for Japan. And then so he starts going through, like, legendary tales. Like the legendary tale section, which was basically stories they can't confirm that are true, but that most people believe to be true because of, like, stuff that is happening in the world, or stuff that's happened, or current circumstances that relate to those past events. And so he picked up something off called the Ninja Chronicles, and Izumi said, what's that, father? And her father said, before I became a hero, I studied, my major in college was history. And she said, yeah, what about it? and he started flipping through the book. He said, "No, not that clan. No, no, this one." And so he flipped to a page called the Hyuga clan. And then, and she said, okay, what about it? And he said, "Look." And then it showed a whole bunch of people wearing vests that were like a dark swamp green with dark blue clothes and sandals. And they all had the same type of hair that Izuku did, and that was practically the same color, and then they all had the same eyes as him. And she said, "What about it? It's just a whole bunch of people who look like that loser." And he said, "No, read the entire thing." And as she was reading about what the Hyuga could do, how the Byakugan worked, how like what they could do, like their secret clan techniques, all of that. And then eventually she got to a page, like they were reading through basically all the important ones. Neji and Hinata. Like, you can't argue with me, there's literally nobody else who's important. So they got to the page about Neji, and then Hisashi said, "That's definitely, it has to be him." And then she says, "What?" And then he says, "Well, recent studies in science, because yes, even though I'm a hero and I stop bad guys, I'm still a science man, show that reincarnation is a thing. And I am sure that with 100% of my body that Izuku is the reincarnation of him." Then she read his description, of what he likes, what he hates, what he did for fun. And then she read his story. She read about how his early life, he was made to protect Hinata, and then during the tuning exams, was bragging about the fate and how Naruto was destined to lose to him. And then Naruto gave him the speech of fate ain't shit. Sorry, I just kind of knocked over my chair. But Naruto gave him the speech about, fate ain't shit. You make your own decisions because you're amazing. And, yeah. And about what happened to him during the war arc. Still, I'm on that episode, but not at that part yet. And so, the place where he got impaled, Izuku actually has like a big birthmark there on both his back and front side. And so, yeah. Just to let you know, this all happened on the last day of school before the 10 months of training. So, they decided that they'd go back and ask Izuku, and, when they got back, Izuku was asleep. And so, next time, I'm going to be doing the 10 months of training, the entrance exam, the USJ, and hopefully the beginning of the sports festival if my storage would allow me. But so yeah, goodbye.